seems like every single weekend for the last month or so, a Bellator-style prelim gets thrown on our plate like coleslaw or butternut squash or whatever side dish you hate to get. And this weekend, to open the card, we have the American bad boy, Charlie Ontiveros, taking on the Mean Machine, Steve Garcia. And Matt, it might seem like I'm starting this video out on the wrong foot, and I definitely apologize, because these two guys are going to reach a pinnacle, and have already reached a pinnacle, that I never will. They've each worn the three biggest letters in all of combat sports on their shorts, on their shirts, and they made the walk to the octagon. And let's give them credit where credit's due. They both accepted short notice fights in less than stellar conditions. For Steve Garcia, he took on Luis Pena on short notice, up a weight class. For Charlie Ontiveros, he took on a surging 2020 Male Fighter of the Year, a guy that Kyle Dawkins not only knocked out, but submitted last week, in Kevin Holland. Now, obviously the circumstance around that fight, I joke, but for Charlie Ontiveros, he took the fight nonetheless. That was an absolute buzzsaw move, and look what happened. But what we can do, we can head back. We can take a 15-minute card breaks look at the rookie review, because for Steve Garcia, his debut was quite a while ago. It was a 2 or 3 minute video. Let's go back and look at what exactly Charlie Ontiveros brought into the cage before he took on Kevin Holland. Charlie Ontiveros, decent nickname, coming in here with the American Bad Boy title. Guy's 11-6, a lot of finish wins to his record. And that's where the buck stops. Charlie Ontiveros needs like an earthquake and an overhand right and an axe kick and a check hook to hit all at the same time. And also the planets have to align, and Jared Cannonier has to be there with crystals, and Diego Sanchez has to be there doing a walk-in at the same time. And Mariya Yamasaki has to be the ref, and Mike Goldberg has to yell a preemptive, it's over, and Josh Thompson has to pump the tires, and Diego Lima and call him a goat. All these things have to happen at once, and then you have to have a Thundercats land for Charlie Ontiveros to win this fight. And Matt, you look as perplexed as I thought you would by that, because that was a loaded statement. But if people are unaware of who Charlie Ontiveros is, I have to say, kudos to Charlie Ontiveros. You made it further than I'm ever going to make it in my entire life. You're going to make an appearance in the octagon. You're not going to have camo shorts like Bryce Mitchell, but you're going to make it nonetheless. So, who's Charlie Ontiveros? Well, 11-6, I had mentioned that. All 6 losses by finish, all of them by knockout. Now, you might not recognize the Todd Moores, Rashid Abdullahs of the world, but you definitely know Jeff Neal, who beat him in 2014. You know Michael Venom Page, that beat him in 2015. You might not know Nicolau Veritnikov, that beat him in 2016. Apologize, I'm fired up. You might know Will Morris, Blue Chip Will Morris, who beat him when he was 1-0. So Will Morris was 1-0. Our guy Charlie Ontiveros was 9-5. Will Morris knocked him out in the first round. Now I'm going hard in the paint about this fight, because Charlie Ontiveros, of all the guys that he's beaten, and he's beaten 11 guys, their combined record of all those wins is 40-30-1. Charlie Ontiveros has beaten guys that have salty records. And of the last 2 wins that he's had, and this is going back, so his third to last win 2017, his last win 2019, and then 2019. He beat Derek Ageday, who's 3-5. Not to take anything away from Charlie Ontiveros. A great jump knee knockout. It was great. Followed it up. And then in his last fight, he beat Washington Luis, who was 5-4. Well, Washington Luis going into that fight hadn't fought in over a year. And his loss before that, Anthony Ivy, a name I already brought up. Derek Ageday lost to Anthony Ivy, Santos Rosales Jr., Jason Langlier, then Charlie Ontiveros, then Nico Echeverry. Right now, our guy Derek Ageday, 3-7. Charlie Ontiveros wasn't fighting the best competition. Matt, I haven't even gotten to the best part. Like, I'm already upset.
I see that.
I will say, Ontiveros' first strike in that fight against Washington Luis was an axe kick from his front leg. Pretty cool, but you don't do that against the best fighters in the world unless you're a madman like Yuri Prohaska or Michel Pereira or Johnny Walker. But sometimes that comes back to bite you when you're fighting the best competitions. You can't do that in the UFC. You probably can't. So for Charlie Ontiveros, I look at all these fights. I look at the records of the guys that he's fought. He's a southpaw. That Luis fight, he ends the fight with a check right hook. He's southpaw again. That strike when you're moving back and you land a check right hook, unless you're Vanderlei Silva, you're gonna have a hard time knocking out top 185ers in the UFC. It's gonna be a hard time. So Charlie Ontiveros, I don't want to count him out, but it's gonna take again, a solar eclipse, the Diego Sanchez's, the Mike Goldbergs. The stars have to align for this guy to win. I'm rooting for him. I hate to be so negative in a fight. I'm not even trying to be negative on Charlie Ontiveros' part. Again, all praise and all kudos to Charlie Ontiveros. So for Charlie Ontiveros, he gets dropped or picked up and thrown. He felt a pop in his neck. The referee ends the action. He leaves on a stretcher. And Dana White, after the fight, said he's 100% fine. So I don't know. All I do know is that in February of this past year, USADA threw out a 6-month suspension to Charlie Ontiveros. And I want to get this right, so I'll read it right off the old paper notes. Because there was the presence of DHCMT. M3 metabolites. Now, you might know what that means. Matt, you might know what that means. That's the same type of substance that was in the second to last light heavyweight champion's blood before he came back, and it was a whole big thing, and they made it big news, and we're just going to leave it where it's at. But for Charlie Ontiveros, he could have been reinstated back in April 13th. That was when he could have, if he reached a level below 100 picograms. So there's that. Charlie Ontiveros now coming back this weekend, taking on Steve Garcia. Now, Matt, I'm really riled up about this fight because this fight is scheduled to take place at lightweight. That's the number that's thrown out there. And you know what? Let's dot my T's and cross my I's. I'm on Topology. We're breaking the fourth wall. All right, UFC Stats also says that this one's at lightweight. Good? We good?
We good.
Everybody at home, we're good? In the plane, on the car? Okay. How many career fights has Charlie Ontiveros had at 155 pounds? That's a question on everybody's mind, right? Good. I'm glad you asked me. 0. He hasn't had a single fight at 155 pounds. The guy's had 17 fights at 170, and then he had a one-off at 185 against Kevin Holland on short notice where he weighed 182.5, and if you're a visual learner, if you're watching this video, you can see it up in front of you. Okay, so Charlie Ontiveros, maybe he's got the right frame for it. Maybe somebody at the PI said it could happen, and maybe it will this weekend. How many fights has Steve Garcia had at 155? I'm glad you asked me. 1. One fight at 155 on short notice against Luis Pena. He had 10 of them at 135. Missed weight in 2 of those fights. Missed weight when he was on Dana White's Contender Series, actually. Ended up with a big finish there. Didn't get the contract. He also had 1 fight at 140 pounds, and he had 1 fight at 145. So Steve Garcia's had 1 fight at 155. He's 6 feet tall, long, gangly, good striker. Now he's moving up to 155. Charlie Ontiveros, American bad boy. He's a striker. Never fought at lightweight in his life. What are we doing here?
What do you want from me? I'm not Dana White. I'm not Sean Shelby. I didn't put this fight together, Craig, okay? If I was the matchmaker of the UFC, I probably just would have made a different fight and put that as the first fight of the night. Because yes, Charlie Ontiveros has a lot of question marks surrounding him at the UFC level. Charlie Ontiveros is kind of like a guy who comes from a junior college but gets drafted in the lottery. And you're like, wait, what? This guy's getting minutes all of a sudden, and then he's played in the NBA, and you're like, really? He's still around? And then he's around like 3 seasons in, and then gets cut. I just don't think Charlie Ontiveros is the type of guy who's going to have like a 7, 8, 9 fight UFC run. I think it's going to be like a 2 and done, 3 and done type of a deal. Because like you had mentioned, with Ontiveros, fought at 170, fought at 185. I have serious concerns about him making the move down to 155 pounds. And the other thing about Ontiveros that I do not like whatsoever is not only is the fact that his record not great, and I know we say this a lot, records are for DJs in MMA. It doesn't really matter what your record is. It matters who you fight and what you look like against that level of competition. The guy's been knocked out 7 times, and that really is concerning. If you've shown a lack of durability at 170 and 185 pounds, I really worry about how durable you're going to be with an extreme weight cut down to 155 pounds that you've never made before in your life. Because here's the thing. Well, who's a good example? Dalcha Lungiambula. When he decided to move down to 185 pounds for the first time later on in life, yes, we were both concerned. He's a big guy. How's he going to look? At least he didn't show the ability to get knocked out by anything up at 205 pounds or up at heavyweight. He was a big, durable guy. If anything, we were worried more about his cardio moving down than anything else. With Ontiveros, he was fragile at welterweight. He was fragile at middleweight. You might want to attribute that to, he was fighting bigger guys, bigger punchers. I just don't think he's all that durable. And the one thing you can say about Steve Garcia, I know he didn't look great against Luis Pena. He does have pretty good punching power, and he does have really good overhands. And if he is able to get on the inside of the distance of Charlie Ontiveros, I think he can land some really big bombs on the inside. Because this thing about Ontiveros, he's got that, when you're at range, my game's pretty good, but when you start to pressure him, he doesn't really deal with it all that well. When you pressure him, he doesn't really have the wrestling background to just be able to say, like, hey, now we're going down to the mat. When I look at Charlie Ontiveros and his game as a whole, he lacks a lot of those X factors that we look for when we look at just UFC caliber fighters.
So for Garcia, he's got good power. He's got not the greatest takedown defense. Obviously, you saw that against Luis Pena, but we had seen that kind of coming into the UFC. And his wrestling offensively isn't really the greatest. For Ontiveros, he throws so many unorthodox strikes that take a lot of movement and a lot of time. It worries me here too.
It does, and that's the thing about Ontiveros. He does like to set up his shots, and even if you look back at the Kevin Holland fight, I know it was a really short sample size, he had trouble with the speed of Kevin Holland. And yeah, Kevin Holland's like an in-between welterweight, middleweight, but still, if you're struggling with the guy's speed at middleweight and at 170, lightweights are normally faster, and former featherweights moving up to lightweight are normally way faster. This is the last thing I'll say about this fight. When it comes to grappling, normally size is a massive advantage. We've seen this many times before. Look at Gegard Mousasi versus Rory McDonald. I would say MMA skill-wise, those guys are very close, but the size was a massive factor in that fight. Where is size much less of a factor? It's in the striking. Why is it in boxing? Guys are able to go up 9, 10 weight classes sometimes and still win belts. It's because in striking, speed is what matters more than anything else, and that's why I think Steve Garcia is going to win this fight. I know a lot of people are going to look to the fact that, oh, Ontiveros, he is the bigger guy, and if he makes lightweight, look how big he's going to be. I think there's a lot more negatives that are going to come along with this weight cut than perceived positives, and that's why I like Garcia in this one.
That's a really weird thing for me, and when I looked at the odds, I thought, okay, this is ridiculous, because if you're going to lay down cheddar on a guy, and Steve Garcia that opened a minus 300, he's a minus 318, you're insane. I mean, Charlie Ontiveros, open a plus 250, he's a plus 245, roughly. Rough numbers. Matt, the Tapology votes, I haven't looked at them as mad as I got.
I'm going to say...
Yeah,
wow.
728 total votes, 85% Garcia, 33% by decision, 60% by knockout for the 15% that have Ontiveros, 42% by decision, 44% by knockout. Again, it's a Bellator prelim fight. That's exactly what this is. Like, they bury good fighters on their prelims. Think about it that way, too. So, I look at this fight, it's very difficult. Again, Steve Garcia is a guy, the majority of his career was spent at bantamweight or bantamweight adjacent, whether he missed it, went to 145 or 140, had a one-off on short notice against Luis Pena. That's cool. Ontiveros, one fight at 185 on short notice where he weighed 182.5, so just scratch that. The other 17 fights are at 170. Why now are you moving down in weight? I would think it'd be easier. There'd be an easier path to the title at 170.
Hashtag one last run, Craig. Come on.
I don't know, man. I have a really hard time picking this. If you can make an honest argument for either guy down below in the comments section, A, I'll listen to you, and B, honestly, I'll talk about it in question mark kicks 2 hours before the prelims coming up this weekend. But for right now, I agree. I like the kicks and I like the speed of Steve Garcia versus some of the flashy motions and strikes that Charlie Ontiveros goes for.
I agree 100%.
All right, Matt, both of us going with Steve Garcia. But again, at 3-1, it seems insane. Again, make your presence known. Let's hear from you down below in the comments section. Was I too hard on them? Maybe I was. You let me know down below, Matt, what I'm not going to be too hard on. The co-main event. Randy Brown taking on Jared Gooden. Love it. Up at the top, strawweight contenders. Dern taking on Rodriguez. I can get down with that. Just keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.